Hey, welcome to the second episode of A Critic's Journey. Now, like I mentioned in the first episode, I'm going to be kind of just looking at movies at random with these podcasts, going back and looking at films that I watched years ago and exploring them. And sometimes I might go on different themes as well. Like I might be watching a few actors' films in a row or watching a few directors' films in a row. It's basically my personal journey as a critic through films over the years. Now, those that know me will know that one of my favorite franchises is the Fast and the Furious. Hey, I love cars, I love action films. What isn't there to like about these films? So anyway, with the new one finally looking like it's going to get released in the middle of this year, I thought I'd do something I've never actually done before, and that is go back and watch all of the past films in a row kind of thing. There's been times when I've pulled my favorites off the shelf, like Fast 5 or something like that, and given it a watch because I've wanted to go back and watch it, but I've never actually watched them from start to finish, like all along, apart from when I first saw them in the cinemas. So I thought I'd go back and I'd start with number one. 2001, yes, 20 years ago, we actually had the first Fast and Furious film, and I've got to say, it still holds up. It doesn't feel like it's 20 years old. Like, even with the cars that are in it, it's not like you go back and watch it and think, hey, this feels really, really dated. You go back and watch it, and the language and the cars and everything like that are still like you would expect today. Now, for those that have never seen Fast and Furious, and I'm guessing because this is a podcast for film lovers, there won't be very many of you, it basically tells the story of Brian O'Connor, played by the now deceased Paul Walker. He's an undercover cop who's sent in to try and find these team of drivers who are robbing trucks. Now, in order to do so, he starts working at a performance car kind of workshop store kind of thing. And the FBI are dead set thinking that the person responsible for these thefts are the Toretto family, led by Dom Toretto, played by Vin Diesel. So in order to get close to them, Brian ends up getting close to Mia Toretto, played by Jordana Brewster, and soon he meets the whole Toretto crew, which includes Letty, played by Michelle Rodriguez, Jesse, played by Chad Lindbergh, Leon, played by Johnny Strong, and I've got to say that it's a well-structured setup for a film. So often in these movies, the bit part characters aren't given a lot of characterization, but the screenwriters here, and there are a few, I've got to admit, but the original idea came from Ken Lai, actually, from a magazine article that he read, but the actual screenplay was written by Gary Scott Thompson and David Ayer and Eric Burquast, and their plot works. Like, I know there's been a lot of people over the years that have talked about different movies that this film has kind of ripped off in a sense, and that's true to an extent, but this really does work with its plot line. The whole idea of Brian being a cop works. I remember the first time I went and saw this film, I didn't know anything about it. I was I was at film school at the time, and I think I probably wagged a class to go and see it. Went and saw it, and I didn't pick that Brian was a cop from the start. So that was a bit of a surprise when it first came about for me, because I hadn't read what the movie was about or anything like that, and I still like to go into films like that. I don't like knowing what is going to happen in a movie. I like to go into a film completely unaware, in a sense. The other thing that really hit me with this film is, although we kind of look at this franchise now as big action blockbusters that kind of set the tone for action movies, we kind of put the Fast and the Furious up there with Mission Impossible. Every time there's a new film coming out, everybody just wants to check out what the latest stunts are that they've done in it, because they're normally stunts that you haven't seen before. I was kind of surprised to go back and watch this and realize that in the early Fast and Furious films, the stunts were very different, and of course, if you've seen the film, you'll remember that some of the big stunt pieces for this are when the different drivers are robbing the trucks. And there's Rob Cohen, the director, he actually almost does it like a Western. It reminded me of those old John Wayne Westerns where you would have like a stagecoach robbery and you'd have the horse riders beside the stagecoach jumping across. It was very simplistic with the way that Rob Cohen made this movie. Now, you have to remember that when Rob Cohen made Fast and Furious, there wasn't a big expectation on this film. I don't think anybody at the time when Fast and Furious was being made thought about the fact that, hey, this is going to absolutely erupt into being a huge film, because let's be honest, Rob Cohen was kind of known for making his kind of B-grade, almost C-grade action movies. And look, I know that they are movies that I've enjoyed over the years, but films like The Skulls, he was kind of known for that kind of stuff. Daylight, of course. He wasn't really known for being like a big director. And of course, The Skulls was where he worked with Paul Walker, so it's probably where the idea came about putting Paul Walker into the Fast and Furious. But Rob Cohen does such a great job of this movie with such simplistic action sequences. The car racing sequences, when you go back and watch them now, you kind of go, well, that's what I see in every film when it's got a car chase. But back then, this kind of stuff was new. He was mixing CGI where the camera goes through the car and stuff like that with real action. And it really did. Like, this movie was kind of a game changer. And I don't just mean a game changer in the sense of it launched one of the highest earning franchises that this planet's ever seen. There was a lot of things in this movie that were very new and different, and they worked. And look, I really enjoyed the whole simplistic style of the stunts in this film. I don't think we ever thought when we actually watched this film that it was going to end up becoming what it did. Like in the by the fact that it ended up becoming such a mammoth franchise. I think a lot of people just thought this is going to be one of those throwaway kind of car chase movies that you forget about not long afterwards. Even to the point where when you actually think about the history of these films, that like Vin Diesel didn't even come back for number 2. He only had a cameo in number 3. So it wasn't like Vin Diesel was thinking this is going to be an absolutely huge kind of franchise, which is interesting when you think about it. There was also a lot of stuff around casting with this film as well. Jordana Brewster, who this was kind of her breakout role, people that auditioned for that role were like Natalie Portman, Sarah Michelle Gellar, Kirsten Dunst, Bijou Phillips, Jessica Biel, all big name people back then. Likewise for the Paul Walker role, they asked people like Mark Wahlberg, Christian Bale, and Eminem to actually go and audition for this film before they ever went with Paul Walker. There's such amazing stories behind this film that you just know straight away that it was going to be a film that went somewhere, because the cast ended up being so good together. And going back and watching the cast now, it's actually quite interesting, because Paul Walker, after he died, had a lot of people talking about the fact that he couldn't act, and I thought that was wrong, because he's a pretty boy actor, but he does pretty well in this first film. And of course, if you've watched The Skulls as well, you will know that he did a pretty good job in that. The one that really surprised me was I forgot how thin Vin Diesel was when he made this movie. This was before he kind of bulked up, and now you see him alongside actors like The Rock in this franchise, and you're like, wow, he's really bulked up. But he wasn't bulked up when he made this movie. The other thing that this film reminded me of was some of the characters that we've lost along the way in this franchise, that were brilliant characters. And I guess I kind of went off the topic before, but you really felt for these characters because of the fact that the screenplay sets them up as characters with characterization. Jesse, I still saddened at times that that his character didn't make it past the first film, because I thought he did. He was one of the most likable characters. Like, when you look at the other characters that are around in the Toretto group, outside of Mia and Letty, Jesse's the guy that you kind of like. Like, I think you watch that character and you hear a little bit about his backstory, about his dad being in jail and him having ADHD, and you just genuinely like his character. So I think, it comes as a really, really big shock with what happens to him in this film. And I'm glad that he's gone on to do more performances in film and television. He's never really made it as a big star, but he's in stuff like Supernatural and things like that. And you just really feel for his character. The other character that I really liked in this film, I thought Johnny Strong's character is a great character, but also Matt Schultz's character as Vince, the guy who pretty much picks Brian as soon as he joins the Toretto crew as being a double crosser. Again, he it's kind of interesting because when you stop and think about it, he hasn't got a lot of characterization. Like, there's not a lot of backstory with him apart from the fact that you know that he grew up with Dom. But you still feel for his character. I know you're supposed to watch that character and think that he's kind of like the enemy to Brian, so you're not supposed to like him. But there's something about the way that he is portrayed on screen where you understand. You really understand what he's going through. So, it's interesting. It's one of those villains where I suppose he's listed as a villain, but you don't really see him as a villain, because at the end of the day, he's got his brother, Dom, like not his literal brother, but his brother in arms that he's thinking of. So it's kind of hard to go, he's a villain against Brian, because you perfectly understand why, with his suspicions that are correct, why he doesn't like Brian. So it's an interesting film with the way that it treats its enemy characters like that. But look, if you haven't gone back and watched The Fast and Furious for a while, definitely go back and watch it. I know it feels weird as a film critic saying this, but it's still pretty much the perfect action film for me. It has great characterization, great special effects, and great stunts that are simplistic. I'll say that for the first film, they were simplistic compared to what we have now in The Fast and Furious. And this movie gave birth to one of the, like I said before, one of the highest earning franchises on this planet. So if you haven't gone back and watched Fast and Furious for a while, go back and watch it, because I can guarantee you it definitely still holds up 20 years later. So that's it for this episode of A Critic's Journey. We'll be back very soon with another episode, because there's a lot of movies on my table at the moment that I want to watch very, very soon.